I'm not going to sit down. Hi, everyone. This is weird. So this is the first time in I think 3 years I've been on a stage. Not coincidentally, and I was talking to some folks outside. It's the first time in I think 2 or 3 years that I've actually worn a collar. So that was very exciting for me today.
True.
I mean, yeah, certifiable, and I think some of you have seen me on calls, and it's always a T-shirt and what have you. So very excited, very thankful for the IAB to put this event together, not just because I could go right by my T-shirts into something that's a little bit deeper in the closet, but to talk to you a little bit about gaming and the overall media ecosystem. So we're here representing Activision Blizzard, for those of you that aren't familiar with the company. It's one of the largest publishers of video games in the world, so titles include things like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Candy Crush, Overwatch, multiple multi-billion-dollar franchises across the portfolio. So noted, my name is Jonathan Stringfield. I oversee global business marketing, measurement research, and insights at Activision Blizzard across our media and esports disciplines.
And I'm Kelly Drake. I oversee our U.S. direct sales team.
And these are our giant faces. So if you can't quite see us on stage, that's what we look like. We are just about that friendly in person if you want to talk to us after the fact. But we have some business that we need to attend before then. So we want to talk about 4 things, okay? So we want to talk a little bit about this concept of influence. So I recognize that the audience here, we have a lot of folks that are very knowledgeable about gaming. We have some folks that came here that wanted to learn a little bit more about it. Regardless of where you fall in that continuum, thinking about how gaming is influential to how we think about technology is important, not just for opportunities that are present today, but also for opportunities that could be present in the near future. So as a practical demonstration of that, we'll talk about a little research that we've done that really goes into how gaming is impacting overall engagement with media across the entirety of the media ecosystem. Because here too, if you're not familiar with gaming, you're probably familiar with other forms of media, whether it's social media or streaming or television or what have you. So talking about all these things in dialogue, in my mind, can really help understand where gaming fits into that. Kelly will pick it up from there and talk a little bit about how that approach that we like to put forward in terms of really concentrating on insights and understanding the player plays out in terms of how we operate with our partners. And then finally, we'll land on, I think, what we're kind of all here for, and that amounts to the value of fun, right? The unique way that individuals gain something from gaming and the unique way that they get value from it. So lots to cover. Let's get started. As noted, I oversee a few functions, but what it all basically amounts to is that I spend a lot of time speaking with brands and agencies and what have you about the power of gaming and the power of gaming platforms. And again, as noted in some of the earlier presentations, for the past 2 years, there's been kind of an increase in the dialogue by merit of the fact that folks have understood that due to the global pandemic, people have returned to gaming, are using it more to find means of sociability, or just find means to, again, find new methods of entertainment. Last 6 or 8 months or so, there's been a lot of talk about things like metaverse, Web3, and the future of technology, and so on and so forth. All of them relevant because they are, one way or another, antecedents of gaming, but increasingly what has become clear is that understanding how individuals think about and use immersive media experiences and traverse things like 3D worlds will become one of the seminal skill sets for businesses and marketers. So what we wanted to do there is think through that framework and talk a little bit about, again, how this has worked somewhat historically. So again, I think gaming has become quite popular in recent years, but obvious fact is it's been around for a while, right? So 65, 67 years, give or take, depending on where you want to pin the start. And from the onset, one of the principal use cases and where gaming has shown up in technology is a means through which that we have used to contextualize it. So as long as there has been video screens, there have been video games. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Gaming is a way through which we can fulfill fairly basic human needs, okay? Means and occasion to socialize with individuals. Being able to accomplish goals, all these wonderful intrinsic motivations that come from gaming, it's in some a very human way for us to relate to new technology. So again, I think we can think about in things like VR, metaverse, or what have you, but if you look back, think about personal computers, televisions. This was seen as a very passive thing that was candidly something that folks weren't really comfortable with at first, but once they integrated gaming into it by merit of consoles, they became more comfortable because it allowed for a more bidirectional interaction with the medium. So understanding this overall how we contextualize technology and moving forward to when we're thinking about, again, Web3, metaverse, future of the potential internet, there's been a lot of interest in making sure that we're using things like gaming to understand these future directions because there's been a lot of momentum behind gaming. And again, there has been an overall narrative that this is in part due to things like the pandemic, but folks that have been in the industry do kind of understand that gaming's been on the rise for quite some time, right? There's a lot of multifaceted, complex factors to that, but there's two that I like to concentrate on. One is generational effects. So we increasingly have groups of folks that grew up gaming. So this is what psychologists call the mere presence effect, right? You grow up with something, you're familiar with it, it's no longer something differentiated, it's just a part of something you do. And indeed, when we talk about everyone's going to be a gamer, what that means is not that, all of a sudden there's going to be like a switch that gets flicked at some point, but realistically, it's just going to be a thing that folks do, and it's not going to be that exceptional at all. It's part of our overall media diet. The second piece is that the overall game industry has been increasingly designing games on a variety of technology that are accessible, and designing games that are fit not just for folks that are familiar with how to play games, but games that are realistically designed for anyone. And this is an important shift that, again, broadens the overall potential umbrella of folks that can be brought into the ecosystem. So if you think about these two parts, right, one of which is knowing and understanding the need state of the player, and the second, understanding the context of the game. This provides a really great foundation to understand in general how we can operate within these ecosystems. So that's why when we wanted to go through and show some findings, we kind of concentrated on something like broader media engagement because it kind of touches on both these things, right? It talks a little bit about how folks think about media, but then also how they're weaving media into their everyday lives. So I have a team of researchers. We have done a long series of various studies that have looked at not just demographics in gaming, indeed. I think we're going to hear a lot of stats about the profile of gamers and what have you, but also how they fit it into, again, larger media eco-diets, and something that I think is more prevalent or more important to understand as we're starting to think about how gaming fits into these larger ecosystems. So we'll start with the basic stuff, right? So again, this was a fairly simple wave, a couple thousand folks, US 18 plus, right? What we found is 2/3 of folks are gaming on a daily routine. So this probably jives with some of the things you've seen in the past, fairly aligned with various industry stats. I know Nicole Pike from YouGov is around here somewhere. She can check my homework on that. Like, this is one of these things I think we're kind of understanding is the opportunity in gaming that, in general, lots of folks are doing it now on a daily basis. So I've worked in research for a long time. And one of the things that I say inevitably happens is that you have to have the Wiz Slide. And the Wiz Slide is where it looks like I'm putting patently obvious information on the screen. And this is your Wiz Slide, right? So if you're looking at this and you're saying, well, gee whiz, Jonathan, are you saying that younger people play more video games than older people? Yes. However, there's nuance, right? So even if you look at the older bracket, we're still looking at 46% on a weekly basis, okay? Not the majority, but we're not far off. Look at the other end of the spectrum, folks that are a little bit younger. 84%, near ubiquity. So keep in mind, this is also a fairly broad age range, right? So you have 18-year-olds, but you also have 34-year-olds. These people have a bad hip at this point, or maybe a bad knee. These are folks that have mortgages, right? If you're lucky, right? So, again, we're talking about a diverse mix of folks. And also keep in mind, we're not talking about folks under 18. So if we were to include children in this, it'd be that much more wide of a range. So long and short, what we're seeing is a predominance of gaming behaviors. But it gets real interesting when we click in on how this is interacting on a weekly basis. So this is the same general information. We're now looking at how folks are interacting with things like gaming, live TV, streaming video, social media throughout the day, right? We're starting with the older bracket. So what we see here is kind of a couple interesting things, right? So we're seeing that for the most part throughout the day, media behaviors are a little bit low, reaching a crescendo in that classic primetime after dinner spot, right? Largely with live TV. So this is the classic model that advertisers have been using for decades to plan and buy media, right? This is how we believed and how for a long time media behaviors worked. Very little through the day, primetime, focusing on television. Something interesting happens when we go to the next bracket. So 35-54, a couple things shifted, right? Live TV bottomed out. So LOL, that's been more or less the big challenge that we have been working on as an industry for the past couple of decades. It's now replaced by OTT, or connected TV, right? Again, this fits with, I think, some of the general narratives that we've heard about cord cutters and what have you. And then also what you're seeing is that, things like gaming and social and whatnot, they're starting to creep up there. But also importantly, if you notice, the amplitude of that primetime curve kind of flattened out a little bit, right? So let's look at the youngest group. Flattens out almost completely. So again, we still have a bit of that peak in terms of the evening hours, and that's kind of what you'd expect. But moreover, what's interesting is that you kind of see this presence of gaming and various types of media throughout the day, right? It's not occasion-based. It's not siloed in a given point. We're seeing that these behaviors are increasingly being weaved throughout the day. So when I talked about accessibility and the bend that the industry has toward that, this is kind of what I mean. That when we think about gaming experiences, it's not that they're just ubiquitous on degree of devices, but even how they're designed allows them to be weaved into everyday life and therefore has an important interaction with other forms of media. So one last point on this, again, we'll bring it back to more common media behaviors. If we think about television, I think it's been a well-known fact that you've had this concept of the primary screen and the secondary screen, right? We've talked about this for years. Ever since mobile phones became more predominant, we now realize that folks are kind of dividing their attention between these, and again, we're still seeing that today. This has generally been cast as something that happens between linear television and social media. What we're finding here, too, is that the content that's being consumed on this second screen is shifting. Moreover, if you put two and two together, that if you're talking about gaming, this is a fairly immersive experience. So it's not like they're kind of like dividing attention between the two. They're solely focused on one experience while the other's going on. So again, I'm not saying that we're talking about any major shifts that should automatically reconfigure how we're thinking about media, but understanding that now all of these various ecosystems are interacting in a really important and interesting way is useful not only to understanding, again, the context through which people are coming to gaming and gaining value from it, but also the broader ecosystem that it's situated in. And it's these types of insights that we like to use when we work with our partners.
So, as Jonathan just described, gaming is an everyday pastime for billions of diverse consumers. They're playing throughout the day and often while consuming other content like TV. Hit the next slide. So how do we reach them effectively and make sure that we're making an impact with that, with our activations? Through our ongoing player research, we're able to understand player motivations and design ad products that meet those motivations and often reward players for the time that they spend with your brand. And as we like to say, if you don't measure it, it didn't happen. So we work with our in-house measurement team to ensure that every activation across our platform is measured for efficacy and we can understand if we're actually driving true business outcomes. Gaming is anything but casual, and brands have an opportunity to capitalize on a truly leaned-in, interactive environment where players are spending significant clips of time throughout their day. By looking to mobile-first placements like playables, there's an opportunity to match the player's mindset and actually drive them down the funnel through interactive gameplay. And it's important for brands to make an authentic connection with any audience. Obviously, gamers are no different. They're super fickle. They are both the player and the fan. So there's an opportunity for brand to take advantage of shared IP activations and really bring the love together for our brands and yours. When we do in-game integrations, we work really closely with our game studios to ensure that they are native to gameplay, they make sense in-game, they're right for the player, and ultimately are going to drive a bigger impact for your brand because they feel organic and native. So the question we are all here to answer today, how can brands get in the game? Foundationally, a rewarded video offers brands a turnkey, super accessible, high-performing way to effectively reach millions of consumers. For brands looking to level up their activation, you can work directly with our in-house creative team to both complement your video through interactive end cards or drive standalone engagement through our new offering, Rewarded Rich Media. And for brands that are looking to make an even bigger splash, you can work directly with our game studios, as I mentioned, and develop actual integrations in-game. Each and every ad product that we bring to market is designed to be effective for our brand partners, make sense for our players, and naturally drive a bigger lift for our brand partners.
Thanks, Kelly. And obviously, we're focusing a lot on the mobile opportunity here. And I think as you're going to listen throughout the day, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that have a kind of a bend more towards mobile platforms. The reason for that, again, is fairly straightforward, that when we talk about the scale of audiences, we do have critical mass as it pertains to our mobile audiences and our mobile games. That said, that's not the only interaction point for gaming, right? There are a multitude of ways that you can interact in the ecosystem. Even at Activision Blizzard, we have things ranging from sponsorships that are more like traditional sports sponsorship within our esports leagues to more in-depth partnerships with the game studios for brand alliances and things of that nature. So lots of potential opportunities, but when we think about any of them, ranging from the more turnkey options that are available on the mobile side to something that's a little bit more intensive, we look at it through the same general rubric, and that's what value it's bringing to the player. All right, so we are fundamentally a video game company. If we are not creating fun experiences for our players, we are not doing our jobs. So we think a lot about the psychology that they bring to the games, right? So when you're playing a game, it elicits all sorts of really interesting functions in the brain. And one that's most common, psychologists call establishing spatial presence. This is what we typically call immersion. And it's very delicate. But when you're putting things into a given context, into a given fiction of the game, that adds to it, it can increase immersion, it can increase spatial presence. If you put something in that doesn't fit with that context, the fiction of the game or what have you, it will break it. So you have the option to be a positive or a negative influence, but all of it is contingent upon understanding the orientation that players have towards these platforms and understanding the game platforms themselves, inclusive of how they're weaved into the day-to-day lives of the players. So on that point, to kind of wrap up some of the things that we talked about before, again, gaming is something that's becoming increasingly ubiquitous. You're going to hear this a lot today. The folks that were growing up playing Super Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, they're stockbrokers, they're ad executives, what have you. They're out there, they're your consumer, right? And many of them have carried this passion for gaming with them throughout their entire lives. Gaming is now something that is an all-day affair, so I think we think about it a lot in terms of something that's a little bit more occasion-based, sitting at a desk or what have you, but realistically, obviously, through mobile opportunities, we're finding mechanisms that we can weave it throughout the day, and even that extends to things like PC and console experiences, which have a bend towards becoming more portable, but also things like cloud technologies that are bringing essentially any game experience to any device. So in the not-too-near future, we will be looking at a world where game experiences will be divorced from the game device, and it's just content, and just like before, we were talking about how gaming is fitting into folks' lives. It's just going to be something that people do. And then finally, gaming doesn't live in isolation, right? It is something that has a place in the broader media mix. So whether you're watching television or participating with other types of media, gaming is something that you can turn to and understand that this will be an important part of the overall media experience, inclusive of how we think about things that are a little bit more esoteric, like second screening. So the final point I'll leave with is that, again, we started by talking about that potentially one of the most seminal skills that brands, marketers, or what have you will need is understanding immersive media experiences and understanding how people obtain value and find meaning in traversing things like 3D worlds. So that opportunity is present, and it is something that's present in gaming. And one of the things that we like to tell folks that understanding some of these broader contexts, again, understanding the motivation and why and how folks are fitting things like gaming in their lives pays dividends in terms of doing good activations now. But as we think about the future of technology, has the real potential to influence us in a way that can really up-level our understanding of how to do these things well and create good experiences for folks that are entering there. It's the same way that we orient ourselves towards our players. It's the same approach that we try to take with our brand partners.
So to learn more and download our research, you can visit activisionblizzardmedia.com. Also, contact information for both Jonathan and I, and we'll be around for the rest of the day, so please come say hi.
Thank you so much, everyone.